Welcome back to Vietnamese Vixens. Today's story comes from Munich, and it's not your typical cautionary tale. It's something different. Something a lot of you have probably felt but won't admit. This is about the gap between what we see online and what we actually find when we get there. Marcus is 34 years old, a software engineer from Germany who saved for 2 years, quit his job, sold most of his stuff, and bought a one-way ticket to Da Nang because every digital nomad blog, every YouTube video, every Instagram story made it look like the last affordable paradise on earth. 6 weeks later, he's sitting in his overpriced apartment writing to us, and what he has to say might surprise you. If you're watching from Da Nang right now, or if you've been thinking about making the move, drop a comment and let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you've ever felt that crushing disappointment when reality doesn't match the dream, hit that like button and subscribe because this one's for you. Alright, here's Marcus's story in his own words. My name is Marcus. I'm 34. I'm from Munich. And I think I made a huge mistake, but I'm not sure yet, and that's the worst part. The not knowing. Look, I need to start from the beginning because otherwise this won't make sense. 2 years ago, I was sitting in my apartment in Munich, which cost me 1,400 euros a month for basically a shoebox with a kitchen the size of a closet, and I was working for this tech company doing the same thing every single day. Meetings, Toad reviews, sprint planning, stand-ups, the German efficiency machine, right? Everything structured, everything on time, everything perfect and sterile, and slowly crushing my soul. I know how that sounds. Privileged white guy complaining about his comfortable office job. But I'm just being honest here. I was burned out. Completely. And I started doing what everyone does when they're burned out. I started scrolling. YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Reddit threads about digital nomads and early retirement and geographic arbitrage. And the same name kept coming up. Da Nang, Da Nang, Vietnam. Everyone said the same things, and it started to feel like a mantra. Pristine beaches, $400 rent, $2 beers, friendly locals, perfect weather. Cheap massages, incredible food. The photos looked unreal. White sand beaches with turquoise water, ancient temples, dragon bridges breathing fire, bowls of pho that cost less than a cappuccino in Munich. And the people posting this content, they all looked so happy, so free. Laptops on the beach. Sunset working sessions. Living their best lives on a fraction of what it costs back home. I started doing the math. My rent alone in Munich was over $1,600. My groceries were another $400. Insurance. Transport. Everything in Germany is expensive, and yes, the quality is high, but I was 32 years old and I could feel my life slipping away in 2-week increments between vacations. I had money saved. I was good at my job, which meant I could probably find remote work or freelance. The more I researched, the more it seemed obvious. Why was I killing myself to afford a tiny apartment in Munich when I could live like a king in Vietnam? So I spent 2 years planning, 2 years watching every Da Nang video I could find, every blog post, every cost of living breakdown. I joined Facebook groups for expats in Vietnam. I read the visa requirements. I learned about the different neighborhoods. A Thuong for the expat scene, My Key for the beach, Pam Van Dong for local life. I saved aggressively. I told my friends I was going to do it, and at first they thought I was joking, but I kept talking about it, and eventually they realized I was serious. My parents thought I was having some kind of crisis. Maybe I was, but it felt like the opposite. It felt like I was finally waking up. Last September I quit my job, gave them 2 months' notice, which is standard in Germany, and spent those 2 months selling everything I didn't need. Furniture, most of my clothes, kitchen stuff, books. I kept 2 suitcases worth of belongings and put the rest in a small storage unit, just in case. Just in case what? Just in case I failed? I didn't want to think about that. I gave up my apartment, said goodbye to friends, told everyone I was following my dream, and I believed it. I really did. This was it. This was me taking control of my life. This was me refusing to be another German worker drone until I was 65. The flight was Vietnam Airlines, Munich to Da Nang with a connection in Hanoi. 14 hours total. I barely slept. I kept thinking about the videos I'd watched. I had this image in my head of what would happen. I'd land, take a taxi to my apartment, the warm air would feel like freedom, I'd drop my bags and walk to the beach and just breathe. Finally breathe. My apartment was already booked. I'd found it on Facebook in one of those expat rental groups. 10 million dong a month, which sounded like a fortune until you did the conversion and realized it was only $380. The photos looked incredible. Modern. Clean. The landlord said it had an ocean view. There was a pool in the building. Fast internet. Everything I needed. We landed at night. Da Nang International Airport is small. Smaller than I expected. And walking out of the terminal, the humidity hit me like a physical thing. Like someone had wrapped a hot, wet towel around my entire body. It was late October, which was supposed to be good weather, the start of the dry season, but it felt like I was breathing through a wet sponge. The air smelled like rain and exhaust and something else I couldn't identify, something tropical and unfamiliar. I stood there for a minute, just taking it in. This was it. I was here. I'd actually done it. Getting a taxi was the first test. There were drivers everywhere calling out, waving, trying to get my attention. I'd read about this. Tourist-trap taxi drivers who charge 5 times the real price. I had the Grab app downloaded, but there was some problem with my SIM card not working yet, so I had to negotiate. I showed the driver my address. He said 500,000 dong. I knew that was wrong. I should have been 200,000, maybe 250 max. I tried to negotiate. My Vietnamese was basically non-existent, just a few words I'd learned from YouTube videos, and he kept saying 500, 500. I was exhausted. Jet-lagged, standing there sweating in the humid night air with 2 huge suitcases, and I just wanted to get to my apartment, so I said yes. Fine. 500. About $19. First tourist tax paid. I tried not to think about it. The drive through Da Nang at night was surreal. Motorbikes everywhere. Hundreds of them. Thousands maybe. Weaving through traffic, entire families on single bikes, no one wearing helmets. The streets were lit up with neon signs I couldn't read. Vendors on the sidewalks cooking food over small grills. The city felt alive in a way Munich never did. Chaotic, but energetic. We crossed a bridge, one of the big ones, and I could see the Dragon Bridge in the distance, all lit up in rainbow colors. I felt a little flutter of excitement then. This was real. This was happening. My apartment building was in An Thuong, the expat area, near my K beach. The driver pulled up, and I could hear it before I even got out of the car. Construction. Heavy machinery. Beeping trucks. At 10 o'clock at night, the building itself looked newer, maybe 5 years old, white concrete with balconies. But right next to it was this massive construction site, like right next to it. Bamboo scaffolding going up 20 stories, all of it lit up with work lights, and I could hear men yelling and metal clanging. The driver helped me with my bags and took off before I could process what I was seeing. The landlord had sent someone to give me the keys, a young guy, maybe 25, who spoke broken English. He showed me to the apartment on the 6th floor. The elevator was tiny and made concerning sounds. We got to the door and he opened it and turned on the lights, and I just stood there. The photos had been good. Really good. Professional even. But photos can't show you everything. The apartment was clean, sure. Modern furniture. A decent kitchen area. But the ocean view the landlord had promised? I walked to the balcony and looked out. There was ocean, technically. But between my building and the water there was another high-rise going up, half-finished, blocking about 60% of what would have been the view. The balcony itself looked out partially onto a construction site. And the sound. Even with the door closed, I could hear it. The constant hum of work that apparently happened around the clock. The guy showed me how everything worked. Air conditioning, water heater, Wi-Fi password. He said if I had problems to contact the landlord on Zalo, which is the Vietnamese messaging app everyone uses. Then he left, and I was alone. First night in my new life. I walked through the apartment slowly, opened cabinets, turned on the shower to see the water pressure. It was fine, everything was fine, this was fine. I kept telling myself that. The construction noise would stop eventually. It was just bad timing. The ocean view was still partial, and a partial ocean view in Da Nang was better than no ocean view in Munich, right? The mold I was starting to notice in the corners of the bathroom, that dark spotting along the ceiling, that was probably normal in tropical climates. This was fine. I didn't sleep well that first night. The jet lag. The construction noise that continued until about 2 in the morning and then started again at 6:30. The unfamiliar sounds of motorbikes and people talking in Vietnamese outside my window. I lay there in the too soft bed with the air conditioning blasting, because without it, the humidity made the room feel like a sauna. And I tried to hold on to the feeling I'd had on the plane, the excitement, the sense of possibility. This was day one. Of course it was overwhelming. Of course there were adjustments. Give it time, give it a chance. The first few days were better. I'd wake up early because of the construction, and I'd make coffee with the little Vietnamese coffee filter I'd bought online before I left. And I'd sit on my balcony despite the view and the noise and watch the sun come up. And honestly, those moments were beautiful. The sky turning pink and orange. The way the light hit the ocean in the distance. The warmth even at 6 in the morning. This wasn't Munich. This was something different. Something that felt like freedom. Or at least the possibility of it. I'd walk to the beach, my key beach, which was only about 10 minutes from my apartment, and the beach was genuinely stunning. Long stretches of white sand, palm trees. The water was warm and clear. There were other people out early, mostly locals doing exercises or walking, and a few Western guys surfing. I'd find a spot and just sit there watching the waves and thinking, okay, this is why I came. This is it. This is the dream everyone was talking about. The food. God, the food was incredible. I'd walk around trying different places. Banh mi from a street cart for 25,000 dong, which was less than $1. Pho for 40,000. Coffee. Real Vietnamese coffee with condensed milk for 30,000. In Munich, a coffee cost me €4. Here, it was barely $1, and it tasted better. The flavors were intense. Bright. Everything was fresh and made right in front of you. I ate like a king for $5 a day. That first week, I probably gained weight because I couldn't stop eating. Everything was so cheap and so good. I found a cafe to work from. One of those trendy places with exposed brick and plants hanging from the ceiling and baristas with man buns. It could have been in Berlin or Portland, honestly. Same aesthetic. But the coffee was $2 instead of $7, and they had fast Wi-Fi and didn't care if I sat there all day. I set up my laptop, checked my emails, started reaching out to my network about freelance work. And for a few hours each morning, I'd work and drink coffee and watch other digital nomads doing the same thing, and I felt like I'd made it. Like I was finally living the life I'd seen in all those videos. I posted on Instagram photos of my coffee, the beach at sunrise, a bowl of pho with the caption, office view. My friends back in Munich commented with jealous emojis. Living the dream, someone wrote, and I believed it. I really did. For about a week, I completely believed it. But there was something underneath that I couldn't quite name, like a frequency I could almost hear but not quite. It would hit me at weird moments. I'd be sitting at the beach at sunset, and there'd be drunk Australian tourists nearby, screaming at each other, knocking over their beer towers, and I'd think, is this it? Is this the paradise? Or I'd be in my apartment, and the construction would start up again, and I'd feel this wave of frustration so intense, it surprised me. Or I'd try to order food at a local restaurant, and the language barrier would be so total, so complete, that I'd end up just pointing at what someone else was eating and hoping for the best. The other expats I was starting to meet, they all said the same things. It takes time to adjust. You'll get used to it. The first month is always the hardest. And I wanted to believe them. I wanted to think that these feelings were just part of the process. Culture shock or whatever. But there was this little voice, this tiny doubt, that kept asking, what if it doesn't get better? What if this is it? What if the dream doesn't match the reality, and you've already quit your job and given up your apartment and told everyone you were doing something brave? I'd sit on my balcony in the evenings, drinking cheap Vietnamese beer, watching the construction workers across the way, and I'd try to convince myself, this is better than Munich. This is cheaper. This is freer. This is what you wanted. But conviction is a strange thing. The more you have to convince yourself of something, the less convinced you actually are. And by the end of that first week, sitting on the beach watching the sun go down over the South China Sea, watching couples take selfies and backpackers play volleyball, and locals sell grilled seafood from coolers, I had this thought I didn't want to have. This thought I immediately tried to push away but couldn't quite manage. The thought was simple and terrifying. What if I made a huge mistake? I didn't tell anyone that. Didn't post that on Instagram. Instead, I posted another sunset photo. Another food shot. Another caption about how lucky I was. Because maybe if I kept saying it, kept showing it, kept performing the dream hard enough, it would become true. Maybe that's how it worked. Maybe that's what all those other content creators had figured out. Just fake it until you make it. Just keep posting the highlights and ignore everything else. Just keep telling yourself this is paradise, and eventually your brain will believe it. I had 10 million dong left for the month. I had a partial ocean view and construction noise, and mold spreading in my bathroom, and incredible cheap food, and a beautiful beach, and absolutely no idea if I'd done the right thing. But I was here. I'd burned the boats. There was no going back. At least not yet. Not without admitting failure. So I'd sit there on the sand as the sky turned purple and gold, and I'd try to feel the paradise everyone had promised me. I'd try so hard to feel it. And some moments, brief moments, I almost did. Week 2 hit different. That's the best way I can describe it. The novelty had worn off just enough that the cracks started showing. And once you see the cracks, you can't unsee them. The construction outside my apartment became the soundtrack of my life. 6:30 in the morning, every single morning, the beeping started. That reverse beeping sound trucks make, then the jackhammers, then men yelling to each other in Vietnamese. I'd lie in bed with a pillow over my head thinking, surely this is temporary, surely they take days off, but no. 7 days a week, sometimes until 2 in the morning, then back at it before sunrise. When I asked my landlord about it, she just said, normal Vietnam, like that explained everything. Like those 2 words were supposed to make me accept that I'd be living in a construction zone for the foreseeable future. The humidity started getting to me in ways I hadn't anticipated. In Munich, when you do laundry, you hang it up and it dries. Simple. Here I'd hang my clothes on the little drying rack on my balcony, and they'd still be damp 12 hours later. Everything felt damp. My towels, my sheets, my laptop bag. I'd open my closet and smell mildew. The mold in my bathroom wasn't just staying in the corners anymore. It was spreading. Dark spots creeping across the ceiling. I tried cleaning it with bleach, but it came back within days. I looked it up online, and everyone said the same thing. It's the humidity. It's Vietnam. Get a dehumidifier. Buy mold spray. Just accept it. But I didn't want to accept it. I'd come from Germany where things worked properly, where buildings were built to code, where mold was taken seriously, and now I was supposed to just live with black spots spreading across my ceiling. My laptop started overheating constantly. I'd be working, and suddenly the fan would kick into overdrive, and the whole thing would slow to a crawl. I bought one of those laptop cooling pads from electronics shop, and it helped, but not much. The heat and humidity were just relentless. Even with the air conditioning on full blast 24/7, which I knew was destroying the environment and probably costing me a fortune in electricity, the apartment never felt quite comfortable. It felt like I was living in a climate-controlled box suspended in a swamp. The co-working community I'd read so much about turned out to be a disappointment. I tried 3 different cafes that were supposedly popular with digital nomads. And yes, there were people working on laptops, but everyone had headphones on. Everyone was in their own bubble. I'd sit there for 4 or 5 hours and maybe exchange a nod with someone. Maybe. The community aspect, the instant friendships, the networking opportunities, all of that existed only in blog posts, apparently. In reality, it was just a bunch of isolated people sitting near each other pretending the proximity meant something. I tried joining some Facebook groups for expats in Da Nang, posted an introduction, got a few welcome messages, tried to arrange meetups. The responses were lukewarm at best. A few people would say, yeah, maybe, and then ghost. Or they'd suggest meeting and then cancel last minute. The vibrant expat scene everyone talked about seemed to be scattered across the city in a way that made it hard to actually connect with anyone. And the people I did meet felt off somehow. Some of them had been in Vietnam for years and had this bitter edge to them, like they'd stayed too long and couldn't figure out how to leave. Others were clearly running from something: divorce, debt, legal problems, failed businesses. Vietnam is the last stop before you had to face reality. The traffic became a source of daily stress. Crossing the street in Da Nang is genuinely terrifying if you're not used to it. There are no real pedestrian crossings. No one stops. You just have to walk into traffic slowly and trust that the motorbikes will go around you, which they do mostly, but the stress of it never went away. Every time I had to cross a major road, my heart would race. And the honking. God, the honking. Everyone honks at everything, not angry honking like in Germany. Just constant honking. Honk to say I'm here. Honk to say I'm passing. Honk to say hello. Honk, because why not? By the end of week 2, the sound of motorbike horns made my jaw clench automatically. I'd rented a motorbike thinking it would give me freedom. The rental shop barely checked if I knew how to ride, just handed me the keys and said, be careful. I'd ridden a scooter exactly twice in my life, both times on Greek islands where the traffic was minimal. Da Nang traffic is not Greek island traffic. My first ride, I almost got hit 3 separate times. Once by a taxi that just merged into my lane without looking. Once by another motorbike that ran a red light. Once by a bus that apparently thought it owned the entire road. I white-knuckled it back to my apartment, and the bike sat unused for the next 4 days while I worked up the courage to try again. The organized chaos everyone romanticizes online is just chaos when you're in it. There's nothing organized about it. It's just a free-for-all where everyone assumes everyone else will avoid them, and somehow, miraculously, most people don't die. The pollution on certain days was worse than I expected. I'd wake up and the sky would have this gray haze, and my throat would feel scratchy. I checked the Air Quality Index app, and it would show unhealthy levels. Not Beijing bad, but bad enough that I didn't want to go running, which was frustrating because I'd imagine running on the beach every morning, living healthy, getting in shape. Instead, I was stuck inside breathing recycled air conditioning while construction sounds drilled into my skull. And then it rained. The weather was supposed to be perfect. Late October, early November, prime time, dry season. Every website said so, every blog post. But it rained. Not a light drizzle, hard tropical rain that came sideways and turned the streets into rivers. It rained for 3 days straight. My apartment had a leak. Water came in under the balcony door and pooled in the corner. I put down towels, told the landlord. She said she'd send someone. No one came. The water just sat there, and I knew it was probably making the mold situation worse. I couldn't go to the beach, couldn't really go anywhere. Just sat in my apartment listening to rain and construction and feeling sorry for myself. I actually missed German autumn, the crisp air, the changing leaves, the predictability of it. I never thought I'd miss German weather, but there I was, sitting in a moldy apartment in Vietnam, nostalgic for October in Munich. The language barrier started feeling less like an adventure and more like a prison. I couldn't read menus except at the tourist places. I couldn't explain problems to my landlord except through broken Google Translate. I tried to learn basic Vietnamese using an app, but it's a tonal language, and I couldn't hear the differences between the tones no matter how many times I listened. I'd try to say something simple like, "Thank you," and people would just stare at me confused, or laugh. The isolation of not being able to communicate properly is hard to explain until you're living it. Every interaction becomes exhausting. Every simple task becomes complicated. Want to buy a SIM card? Good luck explaining what kind of data plan you need. Want to see a doctor? Better hope they speak English. Want to make a friend who isn't an expat? Forget it unless your Vietnamese is actually good, which mine absolutely wasn't. The affordable paradise myth started crumbling fast. Yes, street food was cheap, incredibly cheap, but I couldn't eat street food for every meal. My stomach couldn't handle it. By week 2, I'd had food poisoning twice. Nothing serious, just enough to make me spend a day feeling miserable and questioning everything I ate. So I started gravitating towards safer options, Western restaurants, places with hygiene standards I could verify, and those places weren't cheap. A burger and beer cost $12. A decent breakfast cost $8. Coffee at the fancy places was $4, same as Europe. My grocery shopping, when I tried to buy ingredients I recognized, cost way more than expected because imported goods are expensive. Cheese was like $10 for a small block. Cereal was $7. Peanut butter was $6. And my rent, $380 sounded amazing until I started looking at what that got me. A moldy apartment with construction noise and a blocked view and spotty internet. I started browsing for better places. The nice apartments in good condition in the actually nice parts of Thuong were running $550 to $700 a month. And those neighborhoods, when I went to check them out, were packed with tourists and expats. Every other person on the street was Western. The cafes all had signs in English. The restaurants all had Western prices. It felt less like Vietnam and more like some weird simulacrum of Southeast Asia, designed for people who wanted to say they lived abroad while maintaining all the comforts of home. When I did the actual math on my spending, I was going through about $1,000 a month minimum. More if I wanted to actually enjoy myself. Go out for drinks, take weekend trips, buy anything beyond basic necessities. Yes, that was less than Munich. But it wasn't the $400 paradise lifestyle everyone had promised. And when you factored in the quality of life, the things I'd given up, the stress and isolation and constant low-level frustration, was it really worth it? I started noticing how everything felt designed for tourists. The Dragon Bridge fire show every Saturday and Sunday night. Thousands of people gathering to watch a bridge shoot fire and water. It was impressive the first time, but it was so clearly a tourist attraction, so clearly manufactured. The Lady Buddha statue, Marble Mountains. All the things on every must-see in Da Nang list. I did them all in week 2. They were fine, nice even, but they felt hollow somehow, like checking boxes. Like doing the things you're supposed to do in a place without actually connecting to the place itself. I kept waiting to stumble onto the authentic Vietnam everyone talked about, the real local life. But every neighborhood was either too local, meaning no English and suspicious stares at the foreign guy wandering around, or too touristy, meaning engineered specifically to extract money from people like me. Even the coffee shops all started looking the same after a while. Industrial chic. Edison bulbs, concrete floors, minimalist furniture, plants in the corners. The same aesthetic that exists in every gentrified neighborhood in every major city in the world. The same playlist, too. Indie folk, chill electronic. That one. Cigarettes after sex song. I'd sit in these places that could have been in Berlin or Melbourne or Portland and think, what's the point? Why am I here if here looks exactly like everywhere else? The expat dynamics really started bothering me. I met this British guy at a cafe who'd been in Da Nang for 3 years. Nice enough guy. We got coffee and he spent the entire time complaining. The traffic was getting worse. The city was being ruined by development. Too many tourists now. The good old days were over. I asked him why he stayed if he hated it so much, and he just shrugged. Said it was still cheaper than the UK. Still easier somehow. Like he was stuck by inertia more than choice. Then there was this Australian couple I met through a Facebook group. They'd been there 8 months. They seemed happy at first, but the more time I spent with them, the more I realized they just drank all the time. Day drinking by the pool. Happy hour deals, nightclubs. They were living the exact same life they'd lived in Sydney, except with cheaper alcohol and better weather. They hadn't learned any Vietnamese. Didn't have any local friends. Just existed in this expat bubble that could have been anywhere. Everyone talked about how much cheaper it was than back home. That was the main thing, the constant refrain. Can you believe a meal costs $2? My rent is so cheap compared to London. I could never afford this lifestyle in America. But no one seemed happy, just comfortable enough to stay stuck, like the low cost of living had become a trap that made it too easy to avoid facing whatever they were running from. I met a German couple in their 50s who'd retired early and moved to Da Nang. They seemed content, actually. But when I talked to them more, I realized their experience was completely different from mine. They had each other. They'd traveled extensively before this. They had realistic expectations. They weren't chasing some digital nomad fantasy they'd seen online. They just wanted a warm place by the beach where their pension would stretch further, and for them, it worked. But I was 34 and single and trying to build a life, not just run out the clock comfortably. By the end of week 2, I was lying in bed at night, air conditioning on full blast to fight the humidity, listening to construction sounds that apparently never stopped, and feeling this growing sense of dread. Not panic exactly, just this heavy realization settling in that maybe this wasn't what I thought it would be. Maybe the dream was just that, a dream. Something that looked good in photos and videos, but felt completely different when you were actually living it day after day. The highlight reel versus the behind-the-scenes footage. I couldn't go back to Munich yet. I'd given up my apartment, quit my job, told everyone I was doing this brave thing. What would I say? Turns out paradise has mold and construction noise, and I'm lonely and I miss Germany. That would make me look like an idiot. Like I'd failed. Like I couldn't hack it. So I was stuck. Stuck in this situation I'd created. Stuck in an apartment I didn't like in a city I wasn't sure about, living a life that looked nothing like the fantasy I'd built in my head during 2 years of research. I thought about the content creators who'd sold me this dream. Were they lying, or were they just showing 5% of their experience? The good 5%. The sunset photos and the cheap food and the beautiful beaches. Not the construction noise and the isolation and the daily frustrations and the slow realization that geography doesn't fix internal problems. Not the part where you lie in bed at 3 in the morning listening to rain leak into your apartment and wonder what the hell you've done with your life. I opened my laptop and started typing an email to a friend back home. Started to tell him the truth. That it wasn't what I expected. That I was struggling. But I couldn't finish it. Couldn't hit send. Instead, I closed the laptop and just lay there in the dark, the hum of the air conditioner mixing with distant construction sounds, and let myself feel the full weight of my situation. Week 2 in paradise, and all I felt was trapped. Week 6. I stopped trying to convince myself. That's the main thing that changed. I just stopped. Stopped pretending the construction noise was tolerable. Stopped telling myself the mold was normal. Stopped forcing positivity into Instagram captions. I sat down at my desk on a Tuesday morning, made coffee with my Vietnamese filter, and did the most German thing possible. I made a list. An actual pros and cons list, because that's what we do when we need clarity. We make lists, and we organize our thoughts, and we try to find some kind of rational framework for feelings that don't always make sense. I opened a notes document and just started writing. Everything. The good and the bad. No filter. No audience. Just me trying to figure out what I actually thought about this place after 6 weeks of living here. And what I found was complicated, more complicated than I wanted it to be. Because the truth is, Da Nang isn't paradise, and it isn't a disaster. It's just a place. A real place with real problems and real beauty. And the problem was never really Da Nang at all. The pros. Let me start with the things that are actually legitimately good because they exist and they matter. The beach is beautiful. Not beautiful in the Instagram filtered way. Actually beautiful. On mornings when I get up early enough, before the tour groups arrive and the jet ski rentals start up, my key beach is genuinely stunning. The sand is white and clean. The water is warm and clear. The sunrise over the South China Sea is something I never got tired of watching. Those moments sitting on the sand with a coffee at 6:30 in the morning, that's real. That's not manufactured for tourists. That's just nature being beautiful and me being lucky enough to witness it. The food, when you find the right spots, is genuinely incredible. Not the tourist restaurants. Not the places with menus in English and prices in dollars. But the small family-run places where no one speaks English, and you have to point at what other people are eating and hope for the best. Those places serve food that makes everything I ate in Germany seem bland. The flavors are intense and complex and fresh. Bun sha cao lao. Mi quang kong tam. I've eaten things here I didn't know existed, and some of them have become my favorite meals. When I find a good spot, I go back again and again because that's the kind of consistency you need when everything else feels unstable. The cost of living is genuinely lower if you're willing to live like a local. That's the key part. If you're willing to accept the things that come with that. The noise, the chaos, the infrastructure that doesn't always work, the healthcare system that makes you nervous. If you can accept those things, then yes, you can live cheaper here. My rent is $380. That's real. Street food is $1 or $2 per meal. A beer at a local place is 50 cents. A motorbike costs $40 a month to rent. You can live on $800 a month if you really try. That's less than half what I spent in Munich. The pace of life is slower, and that's both good and bad. Good when you're burned out from the corporate grind. Good when you need time to think and breathe and figure out what you actually want. Bad when you want anything done efficiently. Bad when you're used to German punctuality and systems that work. But the slowness itself isn't wrong, it's just different. People here aren't in a rush the way we are in Germany. They sit and drink coffee for hours. They take 2-hour lunch breaks. They close their shops randomly because family is more important than commerce. There's something admirable about that even when it's frustrating. The people, when I actually manage to connect with them, are kind. I've had locals help me when I'm lost, share their table at crowded restaurants, smile, and try to communicate despite the language barrier. There's a warmth here that exists beneath the tourist transactions and the expat bubble. You have to work to find it, but it's there. I've made one actual Vietnamese friend, Min. He works at a coffee shop I go to regularly. We can barely communicate, but we try. Mix of broken English and worse Vietnamese and a lot of gestures. But he's taught me things. Where to eat, how to bargain, what areas to avoid. That connection matters more than I expected it to. The freedom of not being tied to a corporate schedule is real. I wake up when I want, work when I want. Take a break to go to the beach in the middle of the day if I feel like it. No boss looking over my shoulder. No meetings I don't care about. No performance reviews or office politics. That freedom has value even when everything else is difficult. I'm building something for myself. Freelance work is inconsistent, but it's mine. That ownership matters. Vietnam beyond Da Nang is genuinely beautiful. I've taken weekend trips, Hoi An with its lanterns and ancient town, Hue and the Imperial City. Fong and Na cave systems that made me feel small in the best way. The countryside is stunning. Rice paddies and water buffalo and mountains wrapped in mist. Those trips remind me why I came. Why I wanted something different from Munich's gray skies and efficient boredom. Southeast Asia has a kind of beauty that takes your breath away when you let it. But the cons. God, the cons are real too. And I need to be honest about them because no one else is. The content creators lie. Or maybe lie is too strong a word. They curate. They show 5% of the experience. The beautiful 5%. The sunset photos, and the cheap meals, and the smiling locals. They don't show the other 95%. The daily frustrations. The loneliness. The cultural disconnect. The times when you just want someone to understand a joke in your language. The times when you're sick and scared, and the healthcare system makes you want to fly home. The times when the internet goes out in the middle of an important work call, and there's nothing you can do about it. They don't talk about how cheap isn't the same as good value. My $380 apartment is cheap, but it's also moldy and loud and falling apart. A $700 apartment in Munich would be terrible, but at least it wouldn't have black spots growing on the ceiling. Cheap means something different here. It means accepting lower standards. It means compromising on things you didn't know you cared about until they're gone. No one talks about how living somewhere temporarily as a tourist is completely different from trying to build a life there. Visiting Da Nang for 2 weeks? It's amazing. Beautiful beaches. Great food. Interesting culture. But living here for months? That's when you realize you're not part of the culture. You're adjacent to it, observing it, but never really in it. The language barrier ensures that. The visa situation ensures that. The fact that you'll always be seen as a foreigner, always be charged the tourist price, always be slightly outside no matter how long you stay. The infrastructure is genuinely challenging, and that affects everything. Internet that cuts out randomly, power outages during storms, roads that flood when it rains, sidewalks that don't exist or are completely blocked by parked motorbikes. Healthcare that makes me nervous enough that I've kept my German health insurance active just in case something serious happens. You can't just call an ambulance here and trust the system. You need to know which hospital to go to, whether they speak English. If they'll accept your insurance, that uncertainty adds stress to everything. The pollution during certain months is real. November wasn't bad, but I've heard January and February can be terrible. The air quality index hits red. People wear masks. Your throat hurts. Your eyes water. The beautiful beach city becomes smoggy and gray. And there's nothing you can do about it except stay inside or leave. That's the kind of thing the blogs don't mention because it ruins the paradise narrative. The fact that as a foreigner, you'll always be charged more. Always be seen as a walking ATM. Always be slightly outside the culture, no matter how long you stay. I've been here 6 weeks, and I can already feel that dynamic. The tourist price versus the local price. The assumptions about what foreigners can afford. The constant small transactions where you know you're being overcharged, but the language barrier makes negotiation exhausting. It wears on you over time. Makes you feel like you're being constantly taken advantage of, even when the amounts are small. The loneliness is the hardest part, and no one prepared me for it. Video calls with friends back home feel hollow. The time zone makes it worse. When I'm awake and lonely, it's 3 in the morning in Munich. When they're awake, I'm working or sleeping. We drift apart not because we want to, but because the logistics make connection difficult. Making new friends here is harder than I expected. The expat community is transient. People come and go, no one puts down real roots. The locals are friendly, but there's always a barrier. Language, culture, the fact that I'm temporary and everyone knows it. The expat bubble is real and depressing. I see the same people at the same cafes having the same conversations, complaining about the same things: traffic, construction, the weather, how much cheaper it is than back home. But no one seems genuinely happy, just comfortable enough to stay stuck. Like Da Nang became a trap that's easier to stay in than leave. The low cost of living removes the external pressure to change or grow or do anything meaningful. You can just exist here indefinitely, on very little money, and that ease becomes its own kind of prison. The realization I had sitting there looking at my list was simple but devastating. Da Nang isn't paradise, but it also isn't a disaster. It's just a place with real problems and real beauty. And the problem was never Da Nang. The problem was the fantasy I'd built in my head during 2 years of watching highlight reels. The problem was thinking that geographical change would solve internal problems. The problem was believing people who profit from selling the dream. YouTubers who make money from views. Bloggers who get affiliate commissions. Instagram influencers whose entire brand is, look how amazing my life is. They're not lying exactly. They're just showing you what they want you to see. The carefully curated version that makes you think if you just buy that plane ticket, book that apartment, quit that job, you'll be happy too. But happiness doesn't work like that. I know that now. Moving to Vietnam didn't fix my burnout. It just changed the context of it. I'm still me. With all my problems and neuroses and complicated feelings about life and work and meaning. The difference is, now I'm processing all of that in a moldy apartment with construction noise instead of an expensive apartment with German efficiency. That's it. That's the only real difference. The truth is, I'm staying for now. Not because it's paradise, not because I'm in love with Da Nang, but because I'm here and I might as well see it through. I've adjusted my expectations drastically. I'm not looking for the dream anymore. I'm just looking for the actual good things beneath the tourist layer. The small moments that feel real. Coffee with men where we barely understand each other, but we laugh anyway. Sunrise on the beach before anyone else arrives. Finding a new restaurant that serves something delicious for $2. A good workday where the internet doesn't cut out and I actually get things done. I'm learning Vietnamese slowly. Very slowly. But I'm trying. I joined a language exchange group. It's awkward and uncomfortable, but it's something. I'm accepting that some days I'll love it here, and some days I'll hate it, and both feelings are valid. I don't have to perform positivity. I don't have to pretend this is paradise. I can just exist here honestly, with all my complicated feelings. The lesson, if there is one, is this. If you're thinking about Da Nang, come. But come with your eyes open. It's not paradise. It's cheaper than many Western cities, yes. It's beautiful in places, yes. The food is incredible, yes. But it's also developing, which means infrastructure problems. It's also chaotic, which means daily frustrations. It's also humid, which means mold and discomfort. It's also loud, which means noise pollution that never stops. It's also isolating if you don't speak the language and don't put in serious effort to connect. Don't quit your life for an Instagram fantasy. Don't do what I did. Don't spend 2 years building up expectations based on other people's highlight reels. Come for a month first, a real month, not a vacation. Actually try to live here. Deal with renting an apartment, dealing with a motorbike, navigating the healthcare system, working remotely with inconsistent internet, eating local food every day, being stared at constantly because you're foreign, crossing the street 50 times a day in terrifying traffic. Then decide. Decide based on your actual experience, not someone else's curated version. Because the only review that matters is your own, not mine. Not the YouTube videos. Not the blog posts. Your own experience living your own life in your own way. Maybe you'll love it here. Maybe you'll find what you're looking for. Maybe the pros will outweigh the cons in a way they don't for me. Or maybe you'll realize, like I did, that paradise doesn't exist. That every place is just a place with trade-offs and compromises, and you have to decide which ones you're willing to accept. I'm sitting in a local cafe right now writing this, not one of the trendy expat places. A actual Vietnamese cafe where I'm the only foreigner. The owner knows me now. Smiles when I walk in, makes my coffee without me having to order. It's small and hot and plastic chairs are uncomfortable, but the coffee is good and it costs 25,000 dong, which is less than $1. Traffic streams past outside. Motorbikes and buses and trucks all honking in that constant symphony of chaos. Across the street, someone's cooking something that smells incredible. The sky is blue. It's going to rain later. I can feel it in the air. Is this paradise? No. Absolutely not. Is it terrible? Also no. It's just life. A different life than Munich, but still just life with all its complications and disappointments and small moments of unexpected joy. I'm okay. Not happy exactly. Not miserable exactly. Just okay. Just existing here, honestly, without the pressure to perform gratitude or pretend this is something it's not. And maybe that's more real than paradise ever was. Maybe that honesty, that acceptance of complexity, maybe that's what I actually needed all along. Not a geographical solution to internal problems. Just permission to be complicated about complicated things. I'll probably stay another few months. See how it goes. Maybe I'll grow to love it here. Maybe I'll leave and try somewhere else. Maybe I'll go back to Germany with my tail between my legs and rebuild the life I left. I don't know yet, and I'm learning to be okay with not knowing, with sitting in uncertainty, with accepting that I made a choice and it didn't turn out how I expected. And that's just how life works sometimes. If you're in Da Nang right now reading this, I hope you're having a better experience than me. Or maybe you're nodding along because you feel exactly the same way and you're relieved someone finally said it honestly. Either way, you're not alone. We're all just figuring this out as we go, trying to build lives in places that promise more than they could deliver, trying to find meaning in geography when meaning doesn't work like that, trying to be happy when happiness is so much more complicated than just buying a plane ticket and moving somewhere cheap and beautiful. The sun is setting. I should head home before the rain starts. Home. That's a funny word for a moldy apartment I don't particularly like in a city I have complicated feelings about. But it's where my stuff is, where I sleep, where I work, where I'm trying to build something even though I'm not sure what. So I guess it's home for now. Not paradise, not a disaster, just home. And maybe that's enough. Maybe it has to be. Thank you, Marcus, for sharing this. This one hits different because it's not about heartbreak or scams or getting your money stolen. It's about the lie we tell ourselves when we think moving somewhere will fix everything. The lie the internet sells us. The paradise that doesn't exist, except in carefully edited photos and videos designed to make you feel like you're missing out. If this resonated with you, leave us a comment. Tell us where you are in the world. Tell us if you've ever chased a dream that turned out to be more complicated than you expected. And if you're in Da Nang right now, let us know. Is Marcus right, or is he missing something? Is he being too negative, too realistic? We want to hear from you. Until next time, this is Vietnamese Vixens, reminding you that paradise is just a marketing term, and real life is always more complicated than the highlight reel. Take care of yourselves out there.